What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam. I'm your host. This is the Hobby Hotline episode 317. I am the host today here with Uncle Rich Klein and Dr. James Beckett. Hope everybody out there in the chat is having a great week. Hope you are liking and subscribing on the video here on Bench Clear Media. Shout out to them for hosting the show every Saturday. I'll go around the horn here. So, Rich, how are you doing this week?
Hey, it's a great day to be here. I appreciate that. And episode 317, if this was a batting average in the National League, you would be leading the league in batting right now.
That's right. Uh, Dr. Beckett, how about you? How are you? How's your week been?
Doing great. Doing great. No, I agree with Rich.
Awesome. Want to give us
What's
a couple
my
shout
line
outs
to say?
here.
I agree with you, Jim. You know, I always use the Mickey Mantle line and the Estes Kaffa for antitrust thing in baseball. Casey Stengel went on a 5-minute rant, just did a 5-minute tour, and at the end of it, they asked Mickey Mantle if he had any question, and he just said, "My views are about the same as Casey's."
Want to give a quick shout out to everybody leaving some comments in the chat here. We got somebody watching in Hawaii. We got Mad City Brew in Wisconsin. We got Collector Dream. We got the Mangati collection, I think is how that's pronounced.
Mangini.
Mangini. Oh man, yeah. See, I'm more of a speaker rather than a pronunciator of words that I can't read, unfortunately. We got the professor on. Yep, that's correct. We got Dr. James Beckett. Hello, everybody. All these hellos. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Like I said, one of my favorite things to do here on the show is to get everybody's location. Well, not to be federal or seem like I'm trying to investigate anybody, but I'd like to see where everybody's watching from. So like if you let us know where you're watching from, we'd greatly appreciate that. Always love getting some feedback in the chat there. Shout out to Rex, of course, on the big screens at the shop. Shout out to Rex there down in New Buffalo. And so for the first topic today, we've got, pretty much the news that for the most part that everybody has been seeing over the, I don't know how you wouldn't have seen this news, but we've got the first player, Shohei Ohtani, which, if you're a hobby person, this is nothing new. We've seen Shohei Ohtani be the best player in the MLB for quite some time now. From a sports card perspective, I'm sure everybody has been following this. And now we have another one of the, I don't know, I don't really want to call it Topps lottery tickets, but that's kind of what they've been doing. And they've kind of been doing this already. So I don't know. It is interesting. They also did a Curry and Messi card this past week as well. So, Rich, I'll start with you. What are your kind of thoughts on what they've been doing here with these cards, or maybe just even Shohei Ohtani in general as well?
Well, hey, the bounty. Where is it already? I would have thought the bounty would already be out there. I haven't seen any news on the bounty yet. But what's interesting is apparently there was a scrum for one of the home run balls he hit, and probably both of them. And here's the thing, and I used to talk about this back in the day when I worked at Beckett. I did a ton of interviews in '98 with all sorts of media during the McGuire-Sosa home run chase. Those home run balls are also lottery tickets. Whoever left with it is just like the gentleman who got the Aaron Judge 60-second homer ball last year. That's a ticket. That's a lottery ticket. You buy a seat, you buy your seat, and you hope that you're in a position to catch the baseball and then cash it in. So this is actually a double lottery ticket. The lottery ticket for the home run ball and the lottery ticket for this card. And it's too early, to know because they've obviously probably not shipped them out yet. I think there's a week usually or a day. It depends when. So they're probably not shipped out yet. So I'm just curious when the bounties begin. And I'm also curious because the gentleman walked out with the baseball from the Dodgers game when the bounty begins on that as well.
Yeah. And Ohtani, it's like, how many more records? I don't know. There's like that Kobe commercial where somebody's just like, how much more are we going to do? It's like, how many more records is Ohtani going to break? And it's just every season, it seems like Ohtani is breaking some sort of new record that, like he had, I think it was either last season or the season before, he broke a record that was held by Babe Ruth in like the 20s of being like the only player to hit a certain amount of home runs and getting a certain amount of strikeouts within a season. So Ohtani is just he's such a phenomenon right now. And, Dr. Beckett, I'll ask you a question here. Do you think that this card, for example, is going to be an iconic card within the sports card industry? I mean, it is a top now, and we can kind of go through some of the other iconic cards, but do you see this one really, being in that upper echelon of like iconic cards, maybe the one of one autograph potentially?
It's going to be both in the upper echelon and the lower echelon. The base card is going to be one of the most common cards we've ever seen, and the serial numbered and the one of one obviously is going to be huge. But most of the people are going to get the base card, and they're going to be, again, one of the most plentiful cards you're ever going to see.
Definitely. And so do you think that this card is actually going to perform that like the triple LeBron Steph Curry card, like in terms of how many are printed potentially? Or like do you see this as kind of diminishing returns almost for Topps, where it's like, sure, they're making a couple $1 million potentially, but it's like the more they keep doing this, the more the gimmick sort of is going to wear off?
This is a unique event. I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Rich has a philosophy that when he goes to a dollar box, he's prepared to pay $1. He'd happy to get less. This is the flip side of this. If you were buying into this Topps now and you paid your $11 or $10, whatever it is, you ought to be thinking, I'm happy if I just get the base card. And if I get better, that's okay. But that's not what people are thinking. The $10 or $11 investment, whatever, depending on your quantity, is going to be in the dollar box, maybe even worse. And so that makes it more of a lottery. And that's the thing that ought to be disturbing for Topps, for fanatics, is that they've created this monster card, but they've made all the base cards be really bad. And so they've got to be careful. We're creating collectibles, and it's just like when somebody buys a pack of cards and they take the best card and leave the others on the counter. That's not healthy for the long-term health of the hobby.
Right.
So I'm concerned about it because not that it's a cash grab, it's a business proposition. But if they keep going to the well on this, there are so many more people that'll be disappointed than people that are going to be pleased.
I will point out.
And then also I wanted to highlight or one sec, Rich. I just want to highlight this comment that said the 4040 card did 150K print run. Which I mean, I'm thinking we're probably going to rival that like 580K, like maybe, I don't know. Rich, do you think it's going to get that high? I mean, I guess kind of the same question. Then you can get into what you were about to say. Like, do you think that this is going to get up to that 588K range that the triple card did, or like no?
And if it does, it becomes a pretty common card when you show up, and I'll be happy to buy it if it shows up at a reduced price. That's fine by me. Also, Jim talks about leaving cards on the counter. I am so old that I remember in 1985 at what was then my local card store, people left the 85 Topps Mark McGwire Olympic card on the counter because they were only chasing Gooden or Mattingly in New Jersey. A couple years later, that store was getting $15 each on all those McGwire cards that they had just sacked away. So in a way, if you have patience and people just leave your cards on the counter at a store, you can do pretty well with just the freebies. It is a little harder nowadays because the packs cost so much money.
Right.
But 50-50 is a unique situation. Nobody's ever done it before. We all want it. That is such a cool card. I mean, if I had bought that and I got that out of the pack, I think my first call would be to somebody like Kenny Golden. Hi, how quickly can you be on a plane to get down here? And hand it to him and say, you deal with it. I don't want to have this. Right. I do not want to be holding this any longer than I have to be holding this. Whether it's Kenny, whether it's Jeff Wilson, whether it's, whoever is a legitimate player. Hey, you just get down here. I'll have the card for you. I'll sign your contract. I'll turn it over. Say goodnight, Gracie.
Right. Yeah. And then this card, Ohtani, even I think that this card probably gets over that 588,000 just based on the fact that, like somebody in the chat said, the 4040 card got 150. And from what I remember, the Ohtani, the first Dodgers Ohtani Topps now, I believe was over 100K. So I don't know. I think that there is a which also, like, Shohei Ohtani, he's the biggest name in sports cards right now. So it shouldn't be super surprising that his cards out of any of them are doing like those types of numbers. But overall, I just think it's a card that, it may end up in those like 50-cent quarter boxes eventually one day. But I do think it's also a moment in time that people are going to reminisce over within sports cards, because I think it's a moment that has changed kind of the landscape of the Tops Now concept. Like, they have been doing the lower number parallels and the autographs, but it seems like now, for some reason, I don't know if it's because they're the specific moments that they're choosing. It just feels like there's a little bit more significance here with the Tops Now cards. And so, Dr. Beckett, I'll ask you a question here with Tops Now. When the concept of the print on demand first started, I'm interested to hear from your perspective. Like, was there even any hype around when Tops Now or when these print on demand cards got started, or was it just like people thought it was just another idea, and now we're kind of at where we're at with the concept itself?
All these direct to consumer marketing approaches have had some merit, because you just you print the cards, and it's a much higher price point usually. And then they've added the lottery element, and the lottery element with the again, the addition of the bounties and the marketing push that goes behind hearing about these bounties, it just outrageously brings up the production quantity, such that I'm not sure the production quantity, it way into the six figures, is it's somewhat proportional, but not very correlated with the size of the bounty. The size of the bounty has to do with the intrigue of the moment, and the historicity of the moment, and the coolness of the player, the subject, or the combination. So Tops is laughing all the way to the bank. But again, if they've got to be careful not to kill the golden goose.
Right. Correct. That's kind of what I'm thinking as well. Like, like I was saying before, like, at what point are they just going to see diminishing returns? Like, at what point? I mean, I don't know if there'll ever be a point within the sports card industry where a company loses money on any type of product. But I don't know. You have to figure that at one point they're going to try and come out with one of these cards, and it's just going to flop. Like, no one's going to care. Which, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, like, a lot of the Tops Now, the other Tops Now stuff, that's sort of what it was. Like, it just, I personally like Tops Now a lot. And, Dr. Beckett says that he listens to the podcast I do on Hobby News Daily, and you'll probably, if you listen to that podcast, you've heard me talk at length about how much I like Tops Now cards. So for me, this is, I think that they've really, I don't even think they've necessarily struck gold with this card, because they've been doing this. So it's like, it's really, I think it shows the importance of players versus the actual product. Like, when you have a player, and I think it's just same as just the market in general, like, the rookies are the chase cards, like the rookie cards are the ones that people really care about. And this isn't necessarily a chase card, I guess, but it's also the player that you're selling. Sorry, the player is what the hype is around, not necessarily that it's a Tops Now card. So I'll ask you, Rich, do you have any last thoughts here? We have another topic kind of close to this that I'm going to move on to. But
about one, Bobby Witt Jr. just set a record. It's his second 30-30 season. He's the youngest player ever to have two 30-30 seasons. He plays shortstop. Ohtani was a DH. I can make an argument right now that Bobby Witt Jr. is the best player in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a signed Bobby Witt Jr. card, it's probably from a Tops Now, if they have done such a thing, it's probably flying under the radar, so to speak. That might be a better play to buy the Bobby Witt cards than the heavily produced Shohei Ohtani card. Again, that, always be counterintuitive. As Jim says, low demand, low supply. Well, that's going to have a lower supply. It may not be lower demand, but it'll definitely lower supply. The other thing, and I've always used to say this, the end game for a lot of these companies is direct to consumer.
Right.
And Topps is doing a lot of that. They're also doing a great job getting people, like with the promo last week about the Hobby Rip Night, Hobby Rip Day, of people into their stores. Mm-hmm. So they're doing both. And we've always talked about 10xing the hobby. Well, if you can expand both the stores and the direct to consumer, you're on your way to a 10x. And by doing more than just baseball, as you talked about Messi and Curry and all these people, you're on your way to your 10x. And that's great marketing.
However, on these Tops Now cards, are we really getting 10 times as many buyers? Or are the current buyers buying 10 times as many cards?
Right.
Because they're
I think
getting a
that's kind of,
quantity
yeah.
discount. And that's the scary thing. That was the junk wax era. You had people setting aside bricks, 100 counts of
Right.
certain players thinking, but everybody was doing it. So this is dangerous territory. Uh, it's dangerous. We
Well,
have
it
a
wasn't
collection.
just
This was
100
not a
counts. There were
commodity.
people with 1,600 counts.
Yes.
Right. Right. And then so the other topic actually that's kind of similar. I mean, I would consider this I would consider this on the same par. I think a lot of the takes will be very similar. The one of one non-autograph for the Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant card has been sent to Golden, and there was a $25,000 bounty on the card. I think it might have been Jeff Wilson that put in the bounty. I think it's an interesting topic, actually, that, Rich, I'll start with you. What are kind of your thoughts on just the bounties in general? Because I think that's something that we, along with the, changing of landscape with the lottery ticket per se, aspect of these cards, like now we're seeing bounties that if you want to, for example, like that one bounty for the autograph started at like 150,000 and then someone went up to 500,000. So it's like, what are your kind of thoughts overall on the bounty concept within sports cards, and is it good, is it bad, like kind of what are you thinking about it?
I'll go back to 1998. The lottery ticket was getting some of those historic home run balls. McGwire's 60-second home run ball ended up, instead of in the seats, in the bullpen, and the groundskeeper handed it back to McGwire. He didn't he got something out of it, but not the $3 million. The guy who got home run number 70 or whatever it was, the final home run, got when Todd McFarlane wanted to make a play. He's a legitimate collector. So there was a lottery then. It really was interest, but it was a lottery open to everybody, so to speak. This is also a lottery open to everybody, and I don't have a problem with that. And it becomes an individual decision, but it would change my life if I pulled the signed one-on-one card. It would also help my life if I had pulled the one-on-one unsigned card, and I'm okay with that. Hey, you buy a lottery ticket and you win something, it's a good feeling, but then then you realize if you're really smart, you have to plan, create a trust, or create something to deal with the added wealth. I mean, if I pulled something 25K, yeah, okay, I'll take that. But if I pulled something for 500K, I would make sure I would talk to an accountant or a planner and say, all right, I'm getting this one-time fiduciary insane amount of money in. How do I deal with it?
Yep. Right. Totally. And I think that's also a good point. It's just like, for me, when I was first getting back into cards, I didn't really think of the implications of like buying and selling. So, if you are, if you're listening to the show and you're a new person to sports cards, tracking everything and just, having a good relationship with your tax person is actually probably a good idea. Just, even actually not even just a sports card, just in general, because they'll be able to help you out when it comes down to tax season. So, Dr. Beckett, I'll switch it over to you here. These cards are not coming out of any packs. Some people might even say that opening packs is also very similar to a lottery ticket or something along those lines, but obviously it's a big shift. So do you think it's a good thing that we're doing stuff like this, or kind of what are your overall thoughts on like the bounties and just like what seems like, I don't know, it's become almost gambling to this point where it's like you literally are spending X to get X, and if you don't get it, you'll still get a card technically, but you won't get the one of ones, or you might not get the one of ones. So like, what are your thoughts kind of overall on the shift we've sort of seen within sports cards to this maybe more gambling aspect? You could even throw maybe breakers in there too, but what are kind of your overall thoughts from that perspective?
Society. Everybody's moving more toward a gambling orientation. But like I said, I'm not in favor of things in the hobby that are just purely based on luck. I think there ought to be some skill and it might be skill to see, hey, there's a huge bounty on this. The production quantity is not that large. I'm going to jump in. But when the quantities get so big, it's really a bad bet. It's a bad gamble. And so that's all I'm speaking against. And so people, but what has to happen is there have to be enough of these where people, where the bounty is reneged, or the person doesn't take the bounty and they puts it on Heritage or Golden or anybody, and it goes for less than the bounty, which is possible, so that people can realize, hey, you've got to put some analysis to this, because there's no sure thing. In fact, it's like I said, it's a bad bet. It's a bad gamble to pay $10 to get a 1 in a zillion chance to make $1 million.
Right.
So I think, again, eventually people wise up to what is a good deal or a bad deal. When the price of wax gets up too high, then people go to breaking. But then sooner or later they say, wait a minute, if the price of wax is too high, even breaking it, if the secondary market prices don't support what I get, even if I get my favorite team.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's moving in that direction toward more of a gambling element, more of a chance element. And like I said, I stand for to me, an enduring hobby has a knowledge component, has a skill component. And I hope that, when you open a pack, you don't know what you're going to get.
Right. And then, so Rich, I'll ask you this question. For these types of cards, obviously from a money perspective, it doesn't really make sense to limit the amount that people can order. But like, do you think that adding some sort of cap to how many of these can be purchased, like if 500K, let's say that's the cap, do you think that would be a good idea for Topps? Or, well, actually, no, it wouldn't be a good idea for Topps, because if they can sell 600K, they obviously want to sell 600K. But do you think it would be better, I don't know, for the industry or for people who want to buy this card, if they know that there's going to be a cap on the cards?
Well, sometimes offers are made max. You can order up to 10, up to 20. If that's where you're going from and the company's okay with that, I'm fine with it. That is their decision, not our decision. You can also make an individual decision as to how many you want to buy. Whether you want to buy one, whether you want to buy 100, that is your decision. And if the card company says, I want this to go wider, wide and narrow instead of, I may be phrased like you sometimes have trouble saying it too on your, but you want to go wide and not so deep, or do you want to go more deep? Then that's up to them. If they don't want somebody buying 1,000 and they say your limit is 100, that's great. Your limit is 25, that's great. But that's the company's decision. Your personal decision is a different subject. And here's the other reason why I don't think that's a good idea. I'm a store owner. And let's say there are discounts for buying more. I offer them to my customers. I send them out to my mailing list. Hey, if you get me the money, I will send you, we will buy in group a couple hundred. Your price gets lowered because my price is lowered. And you're doing an aggregation. Sort of like people do sending cards into grading. If you're an aggregator for grading, you probably get a better price on what you're sending in than if you're just the one person. So if you do that, then why would you limit the store from saying, hey, then you're limiting the store's ability or the aggregator's ability to make money. So I'm kind of torn on that. I understand the reason to have limited quantity. But on the other hand, if I walk into Triple Cards, 5 minutes from my house, and they're doing something like that, and I have a chance to buy this at a reduced price, or even the price, and not have to worry about shipping because Triple gets a better price for doing a lot. I'm not saying they do, but I'm just saying, I'm just doing a hypothetical. Then why wouldn't I just become part of the group and let them hand me the 5 packs when I walk in?
Right. And I think, I think we got a couple good comments here that I wanted to point out. So Rex had one basically saying that the maker of the card is participating in the offering of the bounty. I think that's I'm pretty sure that was like either one of the people who did the bounty was kind of affiliated with Topps. It might have been Jeff Wilson. I don't remember, or it could have been Golden potentially. It was somebody that did this bounty, and then also Brody came in and said, "What's stopping them from picking who gets the card?" And you know, that's also I think that's just an issue just in general. I think we have within the sports card industry, and one that like if you were to let's say if you were to poll like how many people within the sports card industry, and if you were to poll like how many people think that Topps or Panini actually do have some say over where cards are going, I think it would be a pretty high percentage of people who might say, yeah, I think that they do know where these cards are going. Like I think that they do know which boxes have which things and which cards are going which place. And we're seeing such like I think the money in general in the industry right now is more than we've ever seen. And I'll kick it to you here, Dr. Beck, and I'll ask you this question: uh, Do you think that back in the day, this sort of thing could have even happened? Like if print on demand, let's say print on demand was a concept that happened in like the 80s or the 90s. Do you think that there would have been this much excitement around it, or do you think that there would have been this much money spent? I mean, I know that like this is sort of like we're looking at a really different industry than we were back then. But like, what do you think of overall? Do you think the industry would have liked something like this? Do you think it would have reacted the same? Like, what do you think of if you compare the era we're in now versus maybe before Topps Now was kind of created?
It's the boiling frog thing. Is it the temperature has increased every year, and now it's getting pretty close to boiling. So you couldn't just all of a sudden do it 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. This has been a gradual movement. You had to have Panini Instant, Topps Now, and then it's gradually evolving toward more of a gambling, the bounties. I will say this, I would think that Jeff Wilson or anybody else that puts out a bounty for a Topps or Fanatics product, I would really, really doubt that there's any contractual or explicit agreement. I don't know that that's what Rex is saying, but there has been speculation about that. Would be very unwise and probably unnecessary because Topps is looking at who's putting out the bounties, and not that they're going to. Well, I mean, they're going to look favorably upon people that support their products with their own marketing efforts. Now, I'm not in the camp that thinks, okay, then to me that means Jeff Wilson might get preferred allocations, as he perhaps should anyway, from having a very large, influential store and media presence. But I really don't go as far to say that he's going to get loaded boxes. That would that could be the end of a company. And again, it's just too big of a secret to keep. So I'm willing to bet the rest of my life on the fact that these card companies are not cheating in terms of giving product other than first off the line, which is not cheating. But if you get the first off the line, you're expected to get bigger hits. And so again, that's transparency. Any cheating like that would undermine the whole confidence in the whole industry. And so I'm betting the rest of my life as a hobbyist on that, because the hobby would go away if there was that kind of cheating. And it's too big of a secret to not be able to extort. If you were in on the secret, you'd be able to hold everybody else hostage. So I really don't think that's happening. But Jeff Wilson, I think Topps is pleased if Jeff Wilson steps up and said, hey, let me be the first one to do a bounty. Topps is noting that and saying he supports our brand.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the thing, I like the bounties. I think that they're fine for marketing. I think, we've seen Dave and Adams do bounties and then they like go and make content about it. So like, I like that. But one thing I didn't necessarily love about this one was that a lot of the bounty stuff came out before the print run was available. Now, thinking back on the timeline, I don't 100% know if the bounties were put out before the time or the time of when they stopped selling the cards. So like from that perspective, I don't love that there were, Wilson and Golden and like a couple other people were putting out bounties before we even knew what the print run of the card was going to be. And I don't know if maybe they knew about the print run, or if in a way putting out the bounty is a way for Topps to get more sales. Like, but again, like I don't remember 100% the timeline of when the bounties were put out versus like when they stopped selling the cards. But Rich, so I'll kick it to you and I'll ask you this question here. Do you think that they should continue with this type of product release, the way that they're releasing it with like a 1-of-1, which I also think that it, the print runs also have to do with like, it's a Curry, LeBron, Steph, KD card. It's a Steph Curry or Steph Curry Messi card, or it's a Shohei Ohtani, some of the biggest names in sports. So like to say that the players are the ones pulling these numbers would make a lot of sense. So for you, Rich, I'll ask you this. What do you think that they should keep going with this kind of concept, or do you think it's like maybe they should see if they can slow things down? Because they did the 1 and now they've done 2 already since this. It's really kind of crazy. So I'll ask you that question there.
Well, I think Dr. Beckett pointed out that there were parallels. If they've done 1-of-1 parallels of every Topps Now card, you can presume they're going to do a 1-of-1 of this too. So you don't even need advanced knowledge to know that, hey, they've done a 1-on-1 on 90% of the Topps Now cards. Pretty good idea that, hey, they'll make a 1-on-1 of this. So you don't need advanced knowledge to know that they're going to do a 1-on-1. You can make a presumption. That's a presumption you don't need to make.
Right.
You know that going in, just like, if you know that in base Topps there's a superfractor of every Chrome card, that they've been making superfractors. They've been making printing presses, printing plates. You don't need to know what the print run is to make a bounty. If there's a Shohei special card next year that's a 1-of-1 from the Topps 2025 packs, you don't need to know the print run. It's going to be a lot in Topps 1, but you don't need to know the print run to make a bounty in advance. You can say, hey, once you see the checklist, there'll be a 1-of-1. I'm making the bounty. So I don't have a problem with that part of it. Also, we were talking about print to demand. Well, again, we're old enough to know that in the 1980s, Topps did what they called Tiffany sets, which were parallel sets made in Ireland of the base sets. And Score did 88 and Fleer did Fleer Glossy. They were printed to order. 87 Fleer Glossy, they made over 100,000 of because they were printed to order. Again, so we've been there before too with print to order sets. I'm actually a big fan of the Tiffany's and the Glossies. And I will tell you, the 88 Score Glossy Traded and Update, those are very difficult cards. They were difficult in the late 80s. They're more difficult today. I know our trade show manager, Andy Jones, spent a long time looking for the Mark Grace Score Rookie and Traded Glossy card. He finally got one, but it took him several years. So, and those were printed to order. So again, history, as Chris Harris pointed out in the chat, it seems like history repeats itself every 30 to 40 years in this. And you just understand and you play the game. And if you take advantage of the game the way it is, and then when things calm down, you take advantage of it that way too. And if it doesn't calm down, we've hit the 10x mark Fanatics wanted.
Right. Looks like we have someone who was in our pre-show meeting here, because we're going to be talking about this a little bit later on. And then this was actually going to be probably my last question here for this topic was the auto 1-of-1. Like I'm surprised we haven't seen it yet. I mean, all the cards. I think I was asking you, Rich, before the show started. Like, I mean, from your perspective, like, where do you think the card is? Like, that's I guess that's maybe my question here as we sort of wrap up this topic, I guess.
It's sitting in a pack somewhere. Probably the next Dallas card show, I'll be able to buy a pack, and it may be in there. I mean, seriously, Who knows? Or somebody may be holding it for various reasons. Again, who knows?
And then actually, so then someone had an interesting topic or question here. Well, not question, statement. Topps offering a bounty establishes a market value for the card and a ready market mechanism to realize it. Slippery slope. Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I mean, the market cap, I guess it's kind of a concept that some people talk about, some people don't. People try and stay away from a little bit. But overall, this card, the autograph, it has that $500,000 bounty. This card had the 2,500 or 25,000. Now it's already up to 24,000. 29,000 with the buyer's premium. So, Dr. Beckett, I'll ask you this question: what do you think this card ends up selling for? And then once the 1/1 auto comes out, do you have any feel for like what you think that card will sell for either?
I can't predict the pricing. Again, when you get an auction, auctions either go high or low. I think that an auction establishes the value of something is an archaic notion. Some auctions go way high and some go way low. So we'll see. Even the bounty, these bounties, to me, again, I take what Rex said. I'm just wondering if there's contractual language. Most of these bounties are just offhand remarks or put out into the social media space of, hey, I'm offering this, but what are the conditions? What are the caveats there? So, if you put it up in an auction, you're saying, hey, I'm going to sell it to the highest bidder. And so to put a bounty, I think the bounty has conditions.
Yeah.
And maybe time limits. You can't come up in 10 years and say, hey, you had a bounty here. So is it a legal contract? And if it is, and if Jeff Wilson has a deal with Topps Fanatics, then that's kind of discoverable. And what would it be? Is it, it needs to be above board. And I guess that's possible, but it's going to make people nervous. It makes me nervous.
Yeah, same. I mean, just from I don't know, maybe it's a little extreme, but from a like the hobby would be ruined type situation. Like if it ever came out that Topps was able to control where this card was going and they picked, that just is, I don't know what would happen to the industry. I don't know what would happen overall, but that would be anarchy. Like that would be, if something ever comes out about that, it would, I don't know, just obviously not be that great. And we got one more, shout out to Mike for putting us on all those TVs at Best Buy. Shout out to, obviously you love seeing that. Mike also talking about the bounty being the next hobby scam, like breaking and mysterious packaging. Yeah, I think it's, I don't know. I think we use the word scam pretty liberally in the industry. So to call it a scam, I don't necessarily know if it's, I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it a scam necessarily, but like, I think some people put out good content about it. Some people just kind of put it out for a marketing thing. Like, so it's really kind of, it depends on where it's coming from, in my opinion. So we're going to move towards a couple, like it's kind of a couple different things here. So first of all, we have the score checklist. And Caleb Williams is nowhere to be found. You search Williams, you got Caleb Williams. Not on the score checklist for the NFL. Marvin Harrison Jr. is on there. And, Rich, before the show started, you kind of brought this up to me, and I didn't really realize that, like, these new products are coming out, and with Caleb Williams not on there, it's an interesting discussion, especially because he does have Topps Now and Panini Instant cards. So, from that perspective, I don't know, like, what it's not necessarily the holdup, but it's like he has both of these other cards. So, like, what? Oh, dang it, I did it again. Sorry about that. I was going to show the other card, the Panini Instant. He has cards from both of those Topps Now sets. So, Rich, I'll kick to you first. Like, what are your kind of thoughts here? I mean, you were the one that told me about this. So, what were kind of your thoughts about this in general?
Well, he better start throwing some touchdown passes pretty soon. He's not exactly lit the world on fire in the first 2 games. Then again, being a rookie NFL quarterback is not that easy.
Right,
But
right.
I think it'll be interesting to see what, if any, sets he shows up at. He's been very protective of his own rights. And this could be a corollary to me of the NIL issues in colleges. Athletes are controlling their own rights a lot more nowadays. And like, for example, and I'm going to go way back in the day, Eric Dickerson had a couple years where he did not have football cards in the base sets because he controlled his own licensing. Earl Campbell did not have cards after 1979. He was very specific about controlling his own licensing. There is nothing wrong with a player controlling their own licensing. And therefore, if he wants to control his own license in a certain way, that's fine. That's name, image, and license. And we've seen with college, the effects in some ways of that. But if he thinks he can do better a different way, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and like I said, Marvin Harrison Jr. is in there, so it's interesting. I hadn't, the big thing this offseason was Marvin Harrison Jr. He hadn't signed with the Players Union, but nobody really talked about Caleb Williams, which I don't know why one versus the other wouldn't be more popular there. But so, Dr. Beckett, I'll ask you this question: in the past, whether it's basketball or football, because baseball, I don't think this really happens, but with basketball or football, have you seen players in their rookie season decide not to be in products? Like, is that something you've ever seen before? Like, it's interesting to me that we're kind of seeing more of it now because, like Rich was saying with the NIL. So like, have you seen that in the past where a player is like, I don't want to be in the product, or, they're protecting their image and likeness, I suppose. Have you seen something like that ever?
Well, Rich already mentioned some things, and what the end result of that was the player wasn't on any cards for a few years. Now we've got still with Panini and Topps, they'll be on one but not the other, perhaps, or they can be on one. The other one has their autograph and memorabilia rights, and so we're not getting shut out. And the NIL is in a whole other story. So yeah, I just think it's gotten confusing. Most people are not looking for Caleb Williams base cards. You got to be a really big star, a huge star, and not just a promising star to be able to sell base cards, even rookie base cards. They want autographs, game used, or more limited, shorter printed things. And so, but like it was said, Caleb's got it. He's probably got a terrible offensive line, but he's got to produce one way or another, or what's going on in the field really matters.
Right. Definitely. And I think the other interesting piece of this too. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
And Adam, to be honest, baseball's had this too. In the 50s, it was pretty infamous that Stan Musial had no cards between 54 and 57. Ted Williams had the 54 Bowman that got pulled, and he doesn't have any cards between 52 and 53 and 57, other than the Bowman card that got pulled in 54. Actually, he had 54 Topps, but then he has, there's the Ted Williams conundrum that pops in for a couple years. And then, so there's always something. And then in the 70s, Rusty Staub, who was a pretty good player, had no cards in 71 and 72. Rick Reichard. And in the 80s, Kevin McReynolds doesn't have a Topps card until 80. He's got Donruss and Fleer, but he doesn't have a Topps card until 87 Topps traded. And I believe there's a couple of other people. So it does happen even in baseball into the 80s. So
yeah,
so you can't exclude baseball. Baseball's been there too. So
right.
It becomes an individual choice. And I didn't mean to interrupt you there, and I'm sorry, but I wanted to point out
totally
that
fine.
baseball has had the same issues. And yes, and people would, at least for the first Caleb Williams, at least to start the season, they would want his base cards. As I said, if the offensive line is bad and the team's not good, maybe then they'll stop. But at least you want to go be part of the hype. There may be no hype by the time a Caleb Williams rookie card comes out.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, maybe this is obviously speculation, but maybe Caleb Williams knows the industry maybe a little bit better than some other athletes. So like, maybe he's like, I don't want to be in score. I want to only be in a certain amount of products. And I don't know if that changes the industry really, but if players, because like that was sort of the thing, like with the generation of players that are coming up now, they know how to use social media, they know how to use the internet, I would feel like they're probably pretty aware of some of the other big rookie cards that have sold. And I don't know if they have a agent or whatever that's in the industry, but that one that could say, hey, we don't want to be in score because we know that score is worthless, or not worthless because obviously, people buy it. But like, I don't know, overall, I just think maybe somebody is in his ear being like, we need to be in exclusive products. Like we don't want to be in all the products maybe. And I don't know if that's going to change the landscape of the industry if players can just pick and choose which products they're in. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But the other kind of piece of this that I wanted to bring up here is that there was some reporting this week that the Topps Now card. So, I mean, I guess we can just even, because we were talking about Caleb Williams, I'll pull that card up. That a lot of the Topps Now cards that they're coming out with are images from college, which, I don't know, in a way to me kind of diminishes the point of Topps Now. I mean, yeah, like I've said in the past, I like Topps Now, and I have done a lot of research on it. So like for me, I don't love that they went this way or deciding to go this way. It's probably like a licensing thing, if I had to guess. Brody actually brought up a point, said there's a mystery redemption and people think it's Williams. So the thing that I just said about Williams deciding not to be in a product, that might not be real. That might be, he might be in this product like as a mystery redemption or something like that. But so, Topps has used Photoshop, not like, I don't think like this necessarily, like with the non-licensed stuff, they obviously have to use Photoshop to get those logos off. And I'm a big fan of the photos that they are using. Like this photo, for example, you can see that you wouldn't really be able to see the logo, which would be up here, and then maybe the logo across the chest is photoshopped out. But so, Dr. Beckett, I'll start with you. What are kind of your overall thoughts on the choice here that Topps is using college cards for the Topps Now debut pro cards?
Photoshopping, and that's been going on for a long time. Again, the card companies are out to make money, and they've got a certain expense of photoshopping an existing photo or going out and getting a fresh photo. And for Topps Now and other things that are more instant, they're going to be expedient. And they're guys, when we talk about 10xing the hobby, when we 10x the hobby, it's going to be even a smaller percentage of the people that are going to care about whether a photo was reused. I mean, the main new collector just says, "Hey, I got a new card here," and they're not going to do the photo matching. It's only the purists, right. The advanced collectors, the super serious collectors, and so I think it'll blow over. I mean, it's not going to devalue the card. I'm not interested in that because it's a reused photo. That happens a lot, and it has for a long time.
Let me just point out that Photoshopping has been around since the year of the flood. The greatest photo that most people consider from 53 Bowman, the Pee Wee Reese jumping in the air photo, is from a 1947 magazine. Photoshopping, there's nothing new to Photoshopping. It's not a big deal. I hate to, Jim, this is where I'll use the Estes Kaffa for Mickey Mantle line. My views are exactly the same as Jim's.
Yeah. And so, Rich, I'll ask you this question. So you don't think it matters necessarily that these cards are supposed to kind of commemorate a moment of these players on the field, but they're not using an image of the player during the actual game that they're supposed to be promoting? Like, you don't, so Rich, you don't think that's like a big deal or anything? Like that's kind of where, because I obviously, from being a graphic designer, the Photoshop stuff, like, you can go back to like what it was. Even just, there was like an, who was it? Giancarlo Stanton, when he first started playing for the Yankees in whatever year that he got traded, there was an image of him in the Marlins uniform, and then they used the same exact image and just photoshopped him into a Yankees uniform in two different products. So obviously that's different, but like for these ones, they're commemorating a moment in these players' careers, like, but they're not using an actual image from the game. Like, do you do you see any problem there, or is it kind of just like what it's really not that big of a deal? Like Jim was saying, like some people might notice, but the majority of people aren't really going to care.
Remember, right now, Topps can't use the logo. Topps Fanatics can't use the logos for a year or two. I think this may be the last year for football. I think basketball maybe 2 years, or it's vice versa. You're more interested in whom the player is rather than in this case, if you're somewhat savvy, you want to have the Caleb Williams card, or, all these rookie quarterbacks. So it's not a big deal that it's not the uniform at the time. And if you're just an average collector, you don't get into this, and it's almost somewhat minutia. I mean, look at some of these baseball cards from the 70s where they airbrush out it's obvious it's a Yankees jersey, and he's been traded to the Cleveland Indians, and you still see the pinstripes. I mean, nobody really worries about it. I mean, 68 Topps Earl Grove football card. He's obviously wearing a Green Bay Packers uniform. It's a Pittsburgh Steelers card. It's not a big deal that they're using the Green Bay Packers. Should they have airbrushed it out? Sure. Is it a big deal? If you're a Steelers collector of the 60s, you're still buying that card. So I don't really have an issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, it might be easier. Might be easier because, here's Jaden Daniels. You don't have to worry about airbrushing out the team logos and things.
NFL, yeah.
You just do the colors, and so it might be simpler.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, so here's my thing: as long as the jerseys that they're photoshopping are correct, because like that's here we're seeing a little bit of a difference between like the like this part of the jersey here and this part, and then like the helmet. Like as long as they are making sure that all the details are correct. Like honestly, if I were them, I would have even tried to Photoshop in that logo the debut logo on some of these cards, just to kind of add a little bit more spice to it. And maybe they don't want to. Maybe actually, we know what, that has the NFL logo, so maybe they're not allowed to potentially. But like you guys are saying, they're some of the most iconic cards of all time, like the Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck card. That's photoshopped. Like I think maybe people don't realize that. Like that's not like that. He wasn't wearing. I think they photoshopped the logo on the hat on that card, and that's like notoriously one of the most iconic cards of all time. So yeah, I think like you said, the Photoshop doesn't really matter. I just think it's interesting that the Topps now is a moment in time, and they are using it on that type of thing, which I think it's I think it was either Rich or Dr. Beckett used the word minutia. I think that is kind of what it is there. Like it's kind of looking into details that are, I don't know, important, but also kind of just like, I don't think people are going to know. It's similar to the 1-of-1 Wembanyama card was also pulled, and that I kind of put together an article for SI, and I was like, are people even going to know that card is unlicensed in 20 years from now? And it's maybe similar to this. Like, I wonder if people are going to look back at some of those things. And so, Rich, I'll ask you this question, like looking back in time, are there any cards that you're like, that were Photoshopped, but and that deters you from buying it? Like, is that something that would deter you from buying a card? I think
I've never even once considered whether a card was Photoshopped before I bought it or not. Mm-hmm. If there's a Mickey Mantle card that's Photoshopped and it was the right price, fine. Ken Griffey Jr. 89 Upper Deck, you have a chance to buy it. Why would you care that the card is Photoshopped? It's an iconic card. Why would you care?
Right.
Guys, the brand and the player are way more important than the licensing status and the photo, not minutia, but I mean, it could even be a caricature of the player. And if it's the right player and it's a Topps card, or even Panini or Upper Deck, a major card company puts out a card of a great player that's very popular, terrible photo, airbrushed photo, not fully licensed, there's still going to be significant demand for it. And 20 years later, it may not even matter, because we're moving in that direction more and more toward brand and player and away from full or partial licensing status. And now and again, they love it that we're talking about it. This
Right,
is
right,
this is
right.
creating buzz that, oh, hey, it's that photo was reused and touched up. That's it's not positive press, but it's press. It's buzz.
Right. Yeah, and I think honestly too, that's sort of how my view on the industry has shifted a little bit over the past like year or so. It's like I think looking at things in a 1 year window, really, like if you look at the industry, it's never there. The industry has always been about like history and historic things. So to look at things in a 1 year window, I think is tough because I think that's when you're hearing everyone's opinions and everyone talking about it. Now, I've been looking at things in more of like a 10 to 15 year window and saying like what's going to happen, like like I said, exactly the point is like are people even going to care in 10 to 15 years whether the card is photoshopped or not, or like maybe people just won't want the card either way. Like that could be the thing. Like who knows, Jane Daniels or Caleb Williams or any of these players could turn out to be busts. Like obviously we root for them and we hope that they aren't because like you said, Dr. Beckett, it's all about the players. Like it really is. If a player is an important player within the industry or within their sport, that's what people care about more than if the card is photoshopped, I think. And so I'm just going to highlight some comments here. We got Million Cubs Project said the 74 Topps Bob Locker Cubs card has Reggie Jackson patrolling in the outfield behind him. I'm guessing that was maybe there was a Photoshop that they missed there potentially. And then Warren said you have the choice whether you buy the card or not. If it's photoshopped, don't buy them. If you like it, buy them. I think that's kind of my sentiment. I think in the industry, just in general, is like if you like the card, buy it. If you don't, then don't buy it. Like that's just sort of how I view things nowadays compared to I don't know, a couple years ago where if somebody didn't like something and they were talking about how they didn't like it online, I would get like upset because I'm like, I like this thing. Why do other people not like it? It would be stuff along those lines. And we are kind of coming up on the top of the hour here. Wow, time really does fly when you're around such good historians like Rich and Dr. Beckett here. So Rich, I'll kick it to you. Do you have any final thoughts here for the episode as we wrap things up?
Well, on licensed cards, if the price was right and you had the money, would you object to buying a T206 Honus Wagner card? That was only not even supposedly player licensed. Would you object to buying a 72 73 Topps Julius Erving rookie? That's not licensed. Would you object to buying a 57 Topps Johnny Unitas rookie card? That's not licensed. Would you object to buying a 52 Topps Mantle? That's not licensed. So again, history tells us unlicensed cards really don't matter that much. If the card and the company and the set are very legitimate, it doesn't matter if they're licensed or not. History has told us that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then I just want to highlight actually one more comment here that I thought was pretty good. Gordon was talking about all of the artistic cards that Panini has come out with. Obviously, those ones are photoshopped. I think maybe the context is maybe a little bit different with those cards versus like these. But I do see the point. I think that's I kind of agree there. And so, Dr. Beckett, I'll kick it to you here at the end of the episode. Any final words? Any final thoughts? What do you got going on? Anything you want to plug?
What Rich said. Hey, Casey. No, I agree with them. It's been a fun hour, Adam. Thanks for keeping it moving. And again, the problem will be when people get frustrated and say, "Hey, it's too complicated," or "It's not fun anymore." And it's still a lot of fun. And hopefully they won't overcomplicate it. But it's still the greatest hobby in the world.
Yeah, totally. So we're gonna wrap it up. I think we're right at the top of the hour here. Want to give a shout out to Bench Clear Media for hosting our show every Saturday. We'll be back here next Saturday. I believe Danny will be hosting with Brody. I know he was in the chat here earlier. I forget who the third host was, but I know Danny and Brody will be on the show next week. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Thank you for leaving some great comments, kind of engaging in the show. We really do appreciate that. Make sure to like and subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your parents, tell everybody you know about the show. That definitely helps us out here. Want to say thank you to everybody watching and listening. And like I said, next week we will be back here for Hobby Hotline. I almost said the other podcast that I do, but that's okay. The Hobby Hotline, I guess it'll be episode 318. So everybody, thank you very much, and we will see you all next week.